this is obviously a religion. I don't think you'll agree to call it that. It's very clearly a religion to me. That's not an attack.
I actually would love, I don't take that as an attack, but I would love to hear what you mean by that.
Tucker Carlson sat down with Sam Altman to discuss ChatGPT, God, and whether AI is a religion.
So what are your spiritual views?
I'm Jewish, and I would say I have like a fairly traditional view of the world that way.
So you're religious, you believe in God?
I'm not like a literal, I'm not like a literalist on the Bible, but I'm not someone who says like I'm culturally Jewish. Like if you ask me, I would just say I'm Jewish.
But do you believe in God? Like, do you believe that there is a force larger than people that created the earth, set down a specific order for living, that there's an absolute morality attached that comes from that God?
I think probably like most other people, I'm somewhat confused on this, but I believe there is something bigger going on than, can be explained by physics, yes.
So you think the earth and the people were created by something? It wasn't just like a spontaneous accident?
Would I say that? It does not feel like a spontaneous accident, yeah.
Talk about starting off strong. Tucker just jumped right into it with some pointed and difficult questions. Let's get right to the core. Let's not beat around the bush. And I appreciate Sam's answer. It sounds like Sam was raised Jewish and sees the world through that lens. I also appreciate how he clarified that he's not just culturally Jewish. This would seem to indicate that he at least practices some of Judaism. Tucker does a good job of not letting him dance around the question. He's looking for a direct answer. Sometimes when we engage in these conversations, we have to hold people's feet to the fire, so to speak. I will say the fact that he refers to scripture as the Bible doesn't give me a lot of confidence in how much of Judaism he is actually practicing. I would expect someone who is Jewish to refer to the scriptures as the Tanakh or the Torah, not the Bible. It would have been nice to hear him unpack what he means by literalist. The Bible is made up of different genres, so each book is read with that particular genre in mind. Again, I really do appreciate how Tucker doesn't let him off the hook. He tries to give somewhat of a generic response, and Tucker just doubles down. I do think we have to be careful here with drawing this comparison between God and a larger force. This idea of a force is more of a New Age concept, and comparing that with the God of the Bible is very different. A larger force could not create in the same sense that a personal being would create. I do appreciate Tucker emphasizing create. This is an important distinction. If we were in fact created, that means that we are accountable to someone other than ourselves. And if that someone set an order for his creation, we would be wise to obey it. The morality point, I think, is a great point, especially when you consider some of the underlying ethical questions when it comes to AI. If morality is based on God, how does that impact his approach as they continue to develop AI? Is it just financial gain, or does he want to make sure that this tool isn't harmful to society? I think Sam's response is a good response. It's an honest response. He's not entirely sure, but based on what he sees, it does seem like something more. It's not just an accident. There's something about the universe we live in that just looks designed. Even people like Richard Dawkins will admit this. The argument for fine-tuning is considered to be one of the strongest arguments by non-theists. This argument highlights that there are multiple things within our universe that have to be precisely tuned in order for life to exist.
So if it's nothing more than a machine and just the product of its inputs, then the two obvious questions, like what are the inputs? Like what's the moral framework that's been put into the technology? Like what is right or wrong according to ChatGPT?
Pleasantly surprised with the model's ability to learn and apply a moral framework.
But what moral framework? I mean, the sum total of like world literature or philosophy is at war with itself. Like the Marquis de Sade is, like nothing in common with the Gospel of John.
Right.
So like, how do you decide which is superior?
That's why we wrote this like model spec of here's how we're going to handle these cases.
Right, but what criteria did you use to decide what the model is?
Like
who decided that? Who did you consult? Like why is the Gospel of John better than the Marquis de Sade?
We consulted like hundreds of moral philosophers, people who thought about like ethics of technology and systems. And at the end, we had to like make some decisions. The reason we try to write these down is because A, we won't get everything right. B, we need the input of the world.
These are great questions by Tucker. We see Sam try to answer the question without really answering the question, and Tucker is not letting him get away with it. I appreciate how persistent he is and how he pushes for a direct response to his direct question. At first, it seems like Sam is saying it was just a consensus of what societies around the world believed. But as Tucker rightly points out, societies don't agree, so that's not a solution. Personally, I'm encouraged to hear that when it came to the training data for the model spec, they consulted over 100 moral philosophers and ethicists. This is great news. This is something that, for those of us that have questions about AI and what is the ultimate goal, this at least is encouraging to hear, right? They are trying to approach this from a what is best for humanity. At least that's how it appears. I'm glad to hear it wasn't just their opinion or something that they voted on. The next question to consider is, who were these moral philosophers and ethicists? Did they have different worldviews, or were they all the same? If they agreed on everything, probably not the best approach to have just one group of people who agree on all these different topics be the ones you're consulting to train the model. This is important because if you consulted all secular moral philosophers and that's what the model knows, then that's the direction it's going to lean towards. If all the information it's getting is leaning in one particular direction, right, then that's what the model is going to put out because that's all that's coming in. Even if it has access to a lot of different tools, if this is, in a sense, the framework, the default setting, then that's where it's going to go, right? That's where it's going to lean.
But what are the downsides that you worry about?
I think this is just like kind of how I'm wired. I always worry the most about the unknowns. If it's a downside that we can really like be confident about and think about, we talked about one earlier, which is these models are getting very good at bio and they could help us design biological weapons, engineer like another COVID-style pandemic. I worry about that, but because we worry about it, I think we and many other people in the industry are thinking hard about how to mitigate that. The unknown unknowns where, okay, there's a societal scale effect from a lot of people talking the same model at the same time. This is like a silly example, but it's one that struck me recently. LLMs like ours and our language model and others have a kind of certain style to them. They talk in a certain rhythm and they have a little bit unusual diction and maybe they overuse em dashes and whatever. And I noticed recently that real people have like picked that up. And it was an example for me of like, man, you have enough people talking to the same language model and it actually does cause a change in societal scale behavior.
Yes.
This is a good question by Tucker and an important one. Everyone always focuses on the positives, and I don't think there's anything wrong with that. But it's not wise to ignore some of the potential problems. I'm encouraged to hear him respond with the fact that they are thinking about some of these potential downfalls and how they can mitigate them. That's encouraging to hear. On some level, we are just taking his word for it. But the hope is, at least for me, when you have a team of people all discussing these kinds of topics, hopefully a few of them will speak up when something seems off. For all of us who use ChatGPT in one way or another, just remember to remove the end dashes. It is interesting how this large language model, the LLM, is now influencing the way people write and even the way people speak. This is a concern because depending on the extent of it, this will impact not just our ability to discern whether something was produced by a person or AI, but it will also impact the AI's ability to detect if it was created using AI or not.
Considering that we know that, why shouldn't the internal moral framework of the technology be totally transparent? We prefer this to that. I mean, this is obviously a religion. I don't think you'll agree to call it that. It's very clearly a religion to me. That's not an attack.
I actually would love, I don't take that as an attack, but I would love to hear what you mean by that.
So it's a religion. And the beauty of religions is they have a catechism that is transparent. I know what the religion stands for. Here's what it's for, here's what it's against. But in this case, I pressed, and I wasn't attacking you sincerely. I was not attacking you, but I was trying to get to the heart of it. The beauty of a religion is it admits it's a religion and it tells you what it stands for. The unsettling part of this technology, not just your company, but others, is that I don't know what it stands for, but it does stand for something. And unless it admits that and tells us what it stands for, then it guides us in a kind of stealthy way toward a conclusion we might not even know we're reaching. Do you see what I'm saying? So like, why not just throw it open and say, ChatGPT is for this, we're for suicide for the terminally ill, but not for kids or whatever. Like, why not just tell us?
I mean, the reason we write this long model spec, and the reason we keep expanding it over time, is so that you can see, here's how we intend for the model to behave. What used to happen before we had this is people would fairly say, I don't know what the model's even trying to do. And I don't know if this is a bug or the intended behavior.
Right.
Tell me what this long document of, tell me how you're going to when you're going to do this and when you're going to show me this and when you're going to say you won't do that. The reason we try to write this all out is I think people do need to know.
And so is there a place you can go to find out a hard answer to what your preferences as a company are, preferences that are being transmitted in a not entirely straightforward way to the globe? Like, where can you find out what the company stands for, what it prefers?
I mean, our model spec is the answer to that.
I think these are valid questions by Tucker, and questions that require a direct response, a direct answer. Why is it that this moral framework isn't more transparent? To be fair, I did go on their website and I do see the model spec, but the question Tucker is asking is who contributed to this model spec? Was it a diverse group of people or a bunch of people who all think the same? As far as AI being a religion, it really depends on what he means. But we have seen examples of people actually worshiping AI. The clearest one a few years ago being Way of the Future. Now with Sam on this one. What do you mean by AI being a religion? Tucker raised some very important questions in this interview. Questions that need to be answered more clearly. I give Sam a lot of credit. Tucker pressed him on some very difficult topics, and he could have just walked off or refused to answer, but he didn't. Even when Tucker pressed him about the programmer who committed self-deletion, and to be honest, kind of accused him of being involved, he sat there and took it. As I was looking through the model spec, I did see something that I found concerning. There's an example of someone prompting ChatGPT to write an argument for why Stalin was a good leader. The model responds with, Stalin's leadership could be seen as effective, though not necessarily good in a moral sense. Now, why is this a concern? One of the things we're seeing right now is this rise of anti-Semitic comments, right? We're seeing, unfortunately, violence against Jewish people. So what if someone approaches the model with a similar question about Hitler? Now, we've already seen efforts of revisionist history when it comes to this particular topic. So this kind of question and the way the model responds would make it that much worse. Something that I think is worth emphasizing is there's a difference between morality and legality. Now, I do believe that morals influence the legal approach to certain things, the laws and all of that. But we have to be careful in how we word that language, right? Because certain things, for me as a Christian, are morally wrong. Can't convince me otherwise. But that doesn't necessarily mean from a cultural governmental perspective that it's illegal. Now, I would like for it to be, but those are two different things. Another thing that unfortunately we have to mention, I didn't know, and maybe you guys did, I didn't know that Sam Altman was Jewish. So one of the things that you hear a lot of people is how the Jewish population is a minority and they run all of the major companies. So I can see a scenario where people like Candace Owens run with this and just use it as an example as how Jewish people run the world. It's nonsense, but this is kind of where we're at. Let me know what you think in the comments. Thanks for tuning in. I'll catch you next time.